Message is being broadcast by the Department of Defense of the Republic. At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere.
Discovery Houston, 20 seconds to LOS T-Drift.
Roger, nice to be in orbit. The first message that comes to me is you are a divine being. You matter. You count. You come from realms of unimaginable power and light, and you will return to those realms.
The vast stretches of the unknown and the unanswered and the unfinished still far outstrip our collective comprehension.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
Good evening. We are broadcasting all the way from the great American South. I'm Joe Roop, and this is Lighting the Void, your voice for verity in this crazy realm of polarity. It is good to be back. It is Monday night, October the 1st. John Polk is in studio here with us, by the way. This is awesome. Our special guest tonight on our program tonight on the broadcast is Nick Pope is going to be here for part 1, and part 2, Bill Birnes is going to be joining us. I'm so stoked. I'm a bit nervous, to be honest with you, because you guys know that I'm a UFO rookie. So being able to talk to these people that have been doing this stuff for so long is a real treat. Now, we are live on the website, which is lightingthevoid.com. The network, obviously, is KTLK Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM. Make sure you go check that out, thefringe.fm. And that place is on TalkStream Live, tons of affiliates and syndicates. TuneIn, Spreaker, iTunes Radio, Radio God FM, Radio Garden, and more by proxy via the Fringe FM. The call to listen line is 701-719-3971. Thank you for all your support and all your donations and everything you guys do. Real quick, this show was brought to you by Audible. Make sure you go get your free Audible book and Audible original as well. It's a new thing they're doing. If you go to audibletrial.com/LTV radio, do that, or grab a t-shirt, or donate, or just share, like, and subscribe. Everything is Lighting the Void. You really don't need links. Just Google it. Lighting the Void. Sign up for our newsletter, our monthly newsletter, which is huge, by the way. We've been getting so many new subscribers on there. I can't thank you guys enough. Just to get one stinking letter a month. It's so crazy. But yeah, so tonight, I'm definitely stoked. Now, tomorrow night on the program, Lon Malo Duquette is coming back to Lighting the Void to talk about his new book, Son of Chicken Kabbalah, which is something else. Let me tell you, I've read it myself, and it's a good book. But tonight, it's a UFO extravaganza with probably two of the biggest names in the field right now. And so I'm not just going to blab. John, you're going to have to lean into that mic and say hi to everybody.
Hello, everybody. This is Reverend John M. Polk. I left Florida on my way out west, but stopped here just south of Little Rock, Arkansas, to kick it with my good buddy Joe Roop on my way out west.
So I got to play with night vision goggles for the first time. So you can imagine the night that I'm having here. And Mr. Pope is with us in here. So just in case you don't know who Nick Pope is, now he used to run the British government's UFO project from 1991 to 1994. He researched and investigated UFOs, alien abductions, crop circles, and other strange phenomena, leading the media to call him the real Fox Mulder. His government background and his level-headed views have made him the media, film, and TV industry's go-to guy when it comes to UFOs, the unexplained, and conspiracy theories. Now, as the world's leading expert on UFOs, Nick Pope has consulted on and helped to promote a number of alien-themed movies, TV shows, and video games. He has presented, consulted on, and contributed to numerous TV shows, has written 5 best-selling books, and lectures all around the world. Nick Pope, welcome to the program. Thank you for spending time with us here on Lighting the Void. It's a real treat.
Thank you. It's great to be on the show.
So I am, as you heard me state before, and John knows this too, I started out in the spiritual field, and it led me into the field of ufology. And to be honest with you, this was something that I just really didn't think about, didn't really believe. But as I get into this more and more, I got to tell you, man, it's exciting, but at the same time, I'm a bit worried because I'm just seeing how much stuff is getting covered up constantly. Before we get into anything here, I'm curious about your belief in UFOs. Have you always had a belief in UFOs?
No, not really. I'd had no belief in the subject and no interest in it. I was simply assigned this as a government job. In the United Kingdom, I worked for the Ministry of Defense there for 21 years, and I did a whole bunch of different postings in the course of that career. And for much of the early 90s, I was just put into this job where I was told that my duties would include researching and investigating the UFO mystery, determining whether there was anything of any potential threat to the United Kingdom, and anything of any more general defense or scientific interest. So unlike a lot of people in this field who come to it through maybe a personal experience or through maybe watching the X-Files and thinking, I wonder if any of this is real, that wasn't the way I got in. I just fell into it by accident and was assigned it just as another government job. But clearly it was a life-changing experience for me getting that job. And I now I'm in a very different place to where I was when I was assigned that particular duty.
Now, do they, and I'll probably ask another rookie question here, but do they deny that you were ever involved in this? Like when you talk about it publicly, have they ever come out and made a statement saying, Nick's, this guy he's never been involved in it, or have they actually acknowledged your involvement?
No, absolutely. You can see me on the website. You can you can go on to the National Archives website in the UK, the Ministry of Defence website in the UK, the British Parliament website, and you can find, for example, official statements in Parliament where people have asked, who is this guy we've been hearing about, and what is this strange job that he did, and the answer's up there on the British Parliament website. So unlike a lot of the alleged whistleblowers in this subject, there's no dispute about my background. I mean, you could phone up the press office and they would confirm, he did that job.
So I wonder if it's just an American thing. Like there's so much cover up here. It's crazy, and I wonder if that's just the case, right? I mean, you even wrote a book, Blood Brothers. That's your newest title, right?
Yes, that's right. Now, that's actually nothing to do with UFOs, but I mentioned that I had served in the Ministry of Defense for 21 years, doing a whole bunch of different things. Blood Brothers is an action thriller that draws on some of the some of the counterterrorism and intelligence information that came across my desk. Now, obviously, I'm not a whistleblower. I would not, unlike a lot of people that you sometimes hear of in this field, I would not dream of divulging classified information. I take my security oath very seriously. So I know there's a line and I don't cross it. But Blood Brothers was a departure for me. I enjoyed writing it, but it took me to some dark places. And if people read it, like I say, it's nothing to do with UFOs. It's more to do with some of the real world terrorism that we're facing at the moment.
The reason why I bring it up, though, Mr. Pope, is because they're, like you said, if they're not hiding anything about your involvement doing this stuff in the UK, but in the US, when we have to, it's kind of like when we have to tell stories like the Blink-182 guy, Tom DeLonge, when he wrote Secret Machines, it's kind of hinting around that, you know, some of this stuff did happen, but I wrote it in a fiction book. And, you know, it's just, I'm just wondering if that's kind of what you're doing here, you know, maybe just kind of hinting around about it. I don't know why we have to do that here, but
yes,
it seems like that's what we have to do to get the word out.
Well, there's the old phrase, the truth can only be told as fiction. Now, actually, it's very interesting that you mentioned Tom DeLonge because, of course, the guy that very much did the U.S. equivalent of the job that I did in the United Kingdom is of course, Luis Elizondo, who is working very closely now with Tom DeLonge in his new nonprofit organization, the To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences. And Luis Elizondo is a former Department of Defense official, specifically the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency. And Lou Elizondo did basically this job running this project known as ATIP, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. And this is absolutely the biggest story in the whole UFO field in the last few months. Of course, up until very, very recently, the public position of the U.S. government was we are no longer interested in UFOs. We don't investigate them. Turns out, of course, that was not entirely correct. And the New York Times ran that infamous story on December 16th last year and basically exposed the existence of the Pentagon's ATIP program. But Lou Elizondo is in a very similar position to me. He takes his security oath seriously. There is no dispute about who he is and what he did, but there is a line, and he, like me, I think because we don't want to divulge classified information, is in a difficult position. And I know a lot of people are saying, well, come on, why can't you tell us all this? The American people have a right to know. But as I always point out, once you tell the American people, once you put it out over the airwaves or wherever, you also tell the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, the North Koreans, et cetera, et cetera. So these are difficult issues. And this is why whether it's my novel Blood Brothers or whether it's some of the UFO work that I do and that people like Lou Elizondo does in the US, we all have to be very careful. It's a tightrope.
Yeah, just do you think it's even possible for us to live in a world that's disclosed? In other words, I mean, honestly, from your point of view, is it even possible for us to, let's say that disclosure happened on a mass level, would we function as a society? I wonder about that sometimes.
I think we'd have to. We'd have to. I mean, literally, unless we were facing some sort of alien invasion scenario like you see in some of the shoot-'em-up sci-fi movies, unless we were in that situation, we'd have to, because life would have to go on. You'd have to continue paying your mortgage payments. You'd have to continue going to work. The kids would have to go to school. Everything would have to go on because that's just the way it is. So on the one hand, post-disclosure, if you use that phrase, every aspect of society and our lives would change: politics, religion, science, technology, personal paradigm, etc., etc. But everything would, on the other hand, have to stay the same because, like I say, you'd still have to go to work, kids would still have to go to school, still have to pay the bills, the mortgage, the IRS, etc., etc.
Right, yeah, we would just have to adapt to it. I just think it would be a paradigm shifter, you know, and it'd be hard to adjust, but
it would, but we'd have to. I think there's a lot more societal resilience than people think. I mean, we are incredibly robust as a species. You could look back. I mean, I'm a bit of a history buff. The medieval times, reliable estimates suggest that 1 in 3, somewhere between 1 in 3 and 1 in 4 of people in Europe were killed by the Black Death. And yet within a generation, everything was kind of back up and running. Life went on.
Now, did you ever speak to Mr. Elizondo when you were with
Yes.
Okay. When you were
not when I was. I mean, our time periods did not marry up. So my time on the British government's UFO project was 1991 to 1994, and indeed, I took early retirement from the Ministry of Defense in 2006. The Pentagon's ATIP program set up, so we understand by the then Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, didn't really get going till 2006, 2007. And Lou didn't really kind of get into that till 2007, 2008. So the time periods didn't really match. So I had no knowledge of the ATIP program, and it was only after this all came out that I found out that there was this guy who had done this kind of, there are things that are different and there are things that are the same. My job was an open public program. People could literally phone up and make a sighting report over the telephone. ATIP was run much more covertly, but Lou and I have had a few email exchanges and phone conversations, and I got to meet him face-to-face a month and a half ago, and it was clear that there were areas of commonality here. The whole ATIP story is still unfolding, literally new revelations almost every week on this. So watch this space. There's more to come.
I'm just curious, and without you, obviously, you're not going to break any real serious security things because, I respect that. But it's interesting that it's called Advanced Aerial or Aerospace Threat. Is it really a threat? Should we be worried about UFOs, in your opinion?
Well, I think we should be. At the very least, we should keep an open mind and not assume that everything's going to be fine and rosy. In the military, there's a kind of saying, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's better to have a plan and prepare for the worst and then be pleasantly surprised if it doesn't come to pass. It's better to be in that place than have no plan, assume everything's going to be fine, then get caught with your pants down if it all goes south.
All right. To jump in anytime, John, if you got any questions for Mr. Pope.
Absolutely. Hey, how are you, Nick? This is Reverend John
Fine,
Polk.
thank you.
I first met you at Contact in the Desert last year, and then I saw you at the UFO Congress this past February in Fountain Hills, Arizona. And I remember you were doing an interview with Linda Moulton Howe and Race Hobbs on his show. And there was a big group of us just standing around. Everybody's taking pictures. And that was a really brilliant interview. So can you remember what y'all talked about?
Absolutely, yeah. We went really deep in that interview. And like you say, it was Linda, who is very, very switched on in this subject. John Burroughs, of course, the main witness, or one of the main witnesses from the infamous Rendlesham Forest case in the United Kingdom, December 1980, now actually transitioning from a witness to a researcher and investigator and indeed a kind of broadcaster on this himself. And John has made many Freedom of Information Act requests to my former employers at the Ministry of Defense and found out a lot about all this. And we were going deep on Rendlesham Forest, of course, but also on the Pentagon's ATIP program. And we were getting into this very question that's just come up about the T in ATIP. It's not for nothing that the T is there, and the T stands for threat. And like I say, you have to, in military, in governmental, in intelligence community circles, you have to plan for this kind of worst case scenario. And as I say, be pleasantly surprised if it doesn't turn out to be that bad.
Anyway, I was there. It was so good. It was such a great interview, and Linda was really digging in, and you held your own. She was really pushing you, but it was really good.
Well, yes, there is always that dynamic. I think Linda and I are friends, and John and I too, but there's always that dynamic that because I did this for the government, in many people's minds, and I'm not necessarily saying Linda and John, but in many people's minds, I'm the bad guy. And always will be. I will never be able to shake off my government background. You can't undo your own past. And of course, that's the job I did. And I realize that it doesn't make me popular with everyone in the UFO and alternative belief community. And there are a whole bunch of conspiracy theories about me. I mean, including the fact that I'm still secretly working for the government, that I'm part of the Illuminati, the New World Order, the Majestic 12, whatever you want to call it. And
I don't buy any of that.
No, I can deny it. But you see, that's the problem. If people want to believe that, they're hardly going to believe my denial. And if I say, no, it's not true, those sorts of people aren't going to say, oh, thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah, well, I've experienced that myself. People can shout, true, 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 liar, 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 and it all sounds good. It's just voices in the wind, really, and then people just get to pick what they believe. But
for sure,
is it true though that we know that intelligence uses disinfo? So I'm sure you can understand why we're all just a little bit leery of this, because number one, it feels like that we're just being handed just a little bit of information. And it feels like, okay, we gave him a little bit of information and that'll keep him busy for a while and we can do our thing. That's what I've always thought, at least for as far as the To the Stars thing goes and what happened in December. But as far as your case is concerned, I don't really believe that either. I think that you're actually trying to help. And is it true, speaking of that, the government is in ways trying to slowly release this information, I would say maybe delicately or safely, to let us know that these things are out there?
Well, it's a tricky one. I mean, let me back it up a little and say that in one sense, there are two contradictory conspiracy theories about this. On the one hand, there is the theory that when people like myself and Lou Elizondo and John Alexander and, the handful of people who have absolutely verifiably done this for the government, there's the theory that when we speak out, some people think it's complete disinformation. But the contradictory conspiracy theory is that some other people say, no, it's part of a campaign to drip feed the public, to gradually sneak this information out piece by piece into the public domain as part of what I've heard described sometimes as an acclimatization program, as if coming out with the whole thing at once is going to be too big of a culture shock for people. But what if we could just get a little bit of a time, drip, 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 and out it comes. I don't think either of those are technically the situation, the reality. I would characterize it a different way, a third way. And again, this isn't popular in certain quarters, but my third way assessment of what's going on is that actually, in some ways, the government is just as much in the dark about all of this, or most of this, as anyone else. The media, the public, the UFO community, etc. If you listen to people like Lou Elizondo talk about running the ATIP program at the Pentagon, they come out with these phrases and they say things like, pilots see them, radar operators track them, it's real, but we don't really have all the answers. And that, I think, is the situation that we're in.
Hey, I wanted to ask you a question about the Citizens Hearing for Disclosure. I believe Paul Hellyer was there, Linda Moulton Howe was there, Richard Dolan was there, I believe Grant Cameron was there. You were there, and you're looking at these Joint Chiefs of Staff, former Congress people, military advisors, etc. What kind of experience is that when also you're getting quizzed and you say something to the effect, I cannot confirm or deny, and then they continue to drill you for answers?
Yes, that was an awkward moment. I was asked about the presence of nuclear weapons at the twin bases of Bentwaters and Woodbridge in the UK, which are the bases associated with the Rendlesham Forest incident. And it has been the long-standing policy of the British government neither to confirm nor deny the presence of nuclear weapons at any location at any particular time. And even though I retired from the MOD, my secrecy oath binds me for life. And I checked back with the press office shortly before attending that event. And I said, look, is this now a little piece of Cold War history that perhaps I can open up about and at least give them a yes or no? And they said, no, it's not. You must stick to the NCND, neither confirm nor deny line. And that's precisely what I did. And one of the former Congress people involved with that, I can't remember if it was Merrill Cook or whoever it was.
I think it was Merrill.
Right. And we've talked about this afterwards. We had a friendly conversation about it quite recently. And he said to me, look, I'm sorry for giving you a hard time, but I had to. And I said, I quite understand that. And you know, but at the time it was awkward. Look, the way I characterize that is that these were so-called mock congressional hearings. Now, I think that's a slightly unfortunate term because it disparages it. It was former congressional representatives, senators, etc., no longer in office, but running the whole thing as if it was a formal congressional hearing. And here's the big news. Here's the big news. I think we are going to get real congressional hearings on this subject sooner rather than later. There have been a few media reports about it. There's quite a buzz about it on the internet, on various blogs and forums. There's been, I think, so far, literally just one mainstream news media report on it, but it's coming. There are discussions going on. The Senate Armed Services Committee has interviewed some witnesses about the infamous 2004 Nimitz incident where this supposedly tic-tac shaped UFO was seen. The U.S. Navy F-18 Super Hornet pilots chased this thing. The radar operators tracked this thing. So the Senate Armed Services Committee is taking a look at that. In parallel, the House Armed Services Committee is taking a look at ATIP itself, what this program did, why did it not even have the phrase UFO or UAP in its title? Why was it dressed up in terms of next generation aviation threats, aircraft, drones, missiles, etc.? Did it look at the unknowns in parallel with that? I mean, is that how you hide a UFO program these days? All those questions, I think, the House Armed Services Committee are going to look at. And if that's not enough for you, the Space Committee's taking a look too.
Really?
So the Space Subcommittee of the main Science and Technology Committee, there have been discussions with the chair of the full committee and discussions as well with the chair of the Space Subcommittee. So we've got at least 3, if not 4 different committees, subcommittees looking at this. There are going to have to be congressional hearings on this. They're going to have to be.
Some I guess, I hate that word, red flags, but some things that I saw that, through the past few months during the Trump administration kind of raised my eyebrows a bit. And when they rehashed the National Space Council here, that I know that Herbert Walker Bush was, a part of the first council. I really don't understand it, to be honest with you, but just knowing that he was on there kind of worried me a bit. And now we're talking about a Space Force deal, and Trump is making it all about these satellites. Do you have any information on that? I mean, is that really just about satellites and owning the space? And it just seems like that it's something else going on. I mean, I'm not trying to paint a conspiracy, but when have we ever wanted a military anything in space? It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, look, as a British citizen who now lives in the US, I don't have any inside information on any current active US intelligence community programs on this subject. And I don't know what the Trump administration, the current administration, may or may not know on this. I've heard, as we all have, obviously the public statements about this. I don't think if you talk to experts in military strategy and doctrine, I don't think there's any getting away from the fact that in parallel with cyberspace, the feeling is that outer space is going to be one of the next two big battlefields in which any future war is going to have to be fought. I mean, people talk about outer space and cyberspace as being the future of warfare. Of course, we all hope war doesn't come, but again, it's back to this premise that you have to always plan for the worst case scenario. And clearly, we look at what the Russians are doing. We look at what the Chinese are doing. We look, not in a hostile sense, but we look just at the capabilities that the private sector are now developing in terms of the space program. We can see, I mean, I think it's no secret that the center of gravity, if you'll excuse the pun, when it comes to the space program is shifting slowly from governments and military into the private sector. And so in one sense, maybe the Space Force is an attempt to push back against this, push back against the people like Elon Musk and SpaceX and Virgin Galactic and a handful of these other players who are increasingly, I think, the major forces to be reckoned with here.
Yeah, I mean, as a citizen, I wonder sometimes, and it's good to hear you say that the government, they earlier when you mentioned that, they're kind of in the dark about certain things too. Probably don't know what kind of technology we're dealing with, but in our community, you obviously know there's so many conspiracy theories, conspiracy theories about the government is working with the aliens and there's actually a space war going on. And it's hard from my point of view because I've just now gotten into ufology and started really studying it. And the reason why I'm asking all ufologists and people that have been in the field and worked in the field as yourself is because I have a project coming in October I'm going to work on that's specifically around this. And I want to separate fact from fiction. You know what I mean? And that's probably why Linda's pushing and other people are pushing because we all just want answers. And when someone like you comes around that's obviously an intelligent person, a great writer, and that's been around this stuff, I can see where everybody just wants to jump on you and try to get answers out of you. And you're like, look, I only know what I know, and there's a few things I can't talk about. But I think a lot of people just want validation for some of their conspiracies. You know what I mean?
Yes. I mean, I think the thing to stress with a lot of this is that, frankly, it's 99% noise and 1% signal. But that doesn't mean the signal isn't there and isn't worth checking out. I mean, one of my favorite phrases in all of this is when I say to people, the skeptics have to be right every day, but the believers only have to be right once. And it's true that even if you set aside as hoax, misidentification, delusion, 99% of everything you hear about ufology, that which is left is still interesting and important and worth a look.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason why I bring up things like the Space Force and Trump and stuff like that is not to dig out any secret information from you. It's just because you and maybe only one other person that's willing to talk to us has ever had an inside look at maybe some of how these operations work, so we just kind of wonder about it. And it really says a lot, actually. At first, I got to tell you, I was a super skeptic, especially about Elizondo, but I think it's a good thing that this is happening. And it seems like progress is starting to happen.
Yes, I think so. I think Lou has talked about his aspiration that we have what he characterizes as a conversation with the American people about this. He said, let's have a conversation with the American people. Let's set aside our prejudices about this, whether we're true believers, diehard debunkers, wherever we are on the belief spectrum, let's set that aside. Let's set aside the belief and let's look at the data that we have. And let's take it from there and have a conversation. And I don't think anyone, wherever they stand on this issue, could argue with the fact that that's a pretty good aspiration. I mean, what's wrong with sitting down and talking?
Right, exactly. And you have a new DVD coming out as well, isn't that right? Aliens at the Pentagon.
Yes, Aliens at the Pentagon is actually all about what we've just been discussing, really. It's my take on the Pentagon's ATIP program. I scripted the DVD, I narrated it, I appear on camera, and it is basically, it's comes out in just really a few days' time. I think it's October 9th is the official release. Reality Entertainment is the production company that make it. I think it's going to be across all platforms. And it's really me sitting down as somebody who has done a similar job for the British government, me sitting down and giving an insider perspective on what I think's going on here. I mean, this is a story that you almost couldn't make it up. I mean, if a year ago we'd been having this conversation and I had said to you and the listeners that the biggest single story about UFOs is going to break, and it's going to involve this bizarre cast of characters, including this pop punk musician, the former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, Bob Bigelow, who used to run the budget hotel chain, and all these bizarre characters are going to come together and tell the biggest story to hit this subject in decades. You'd have said you're crazy. The real world doesn't work like that. Well, it does. And in Aliens at the Pentagon, I give this inside perspective, this government angle on what I think has happened, what I think is going on, and where we might end up with some of this.
Hey, I heard Richard Dolan say that one of the photos that was used by Tom DeLonge was actually a Mylar balloon from 2006. Is there any credibility to that story?
Yes, there is. The guys simply goofed. They were giving a press conference, and I think they said to one of their admin people, just pull up get some good, we need to illustrate this story with something.
Wow.
Frankly, they only had 2 at the time, subsequently 3 declassified Pentagon videos, which, if you're familiar with the names, the nicknames of these 3 videos now, there's Tic Tac, Gimbal, and Go Fast. But if you're just taking stills from that, it doesn't really give you much to work with. So I think the To the Stars people were doing their press conference, and they obviously told one of their people, just illustrate this, get some stuff. And yeah, sure, they grabbed something off the internet, which turned out, as Richard correctly said, to be a Mylar balloon. But my point is, hey, don't let's throw the baby out with the bathwater here. That was an administrative error, so far as I know. They were talking to the audience. I don't think they even saw what was going on, what stills people were putting up behind. That's not what we should judge all this on. What we should judge all this on is the ongoing saga of what is the Pentagon itself going to confirm about this, and that question has yet to be answered.
That's very interesting. Let's talk about Paul Hellyer. I know you know him personally, and he came out, 2006 or something like that, and said unequivocally, I'm the first person of rank in the defense ministry to say unequivocally that UFOs have been visiting our plant for hundreds, perhaps thousands of years, and the cosmos is actually teeming with life, and that our governments know about it.
Yes, I have met Paul Hellyer, I think, maybe 5 or 6 times. I think the first time was back in 2010 when we had a lunch in the UK. And as I say, I think I've met him 5 or 6 times in total. Very intelligent man, very, very articulate, deep thinker across a whole range of issues. Not just UFOs, of course, but you get talking to him about financial policy, banking policy. I mean, incredibly intelligent, thoughtful individual. Very interesting views. Yeah, he makes no. He doesn't hide the fact that he's absolutely convinced this is all real. He has a number of sources in government. He, of course, was the former Canadian Defense Minister, former Deputy Prime Minister of Canada. He clearly has a whole range of different sources that I don't have. I mean, of course, in this whole government and intelligence community, everything is very compartmentalized. Everything is on the need-to-know basis. So he knows things I don't know. I probably know 1 or 2 things he doesn't know, and everything is separate. So I can't – it gets me in a difficult position with questions like this because I don't know what he knows. But when I hear somebody of his rank with his background come out and say the things he says, then absolutely, of course, it has to make one wonder.
Yeah, he paved the way for a lot of researchers like yourself to come forward, former ministers of defense representing countries. So, he helped pave the way for people just like you.
Absolutely. And he, of course, was far more senior than I was. I'm just a middle-ranking civil servant. I mean, he was, like I say, defense minister and deputy prime minister. So he was significantly above me in terms of rank.
Now, I have to ask this on behalf of the chat room that they want to know. I know you said the DVD's being released on October the 9th, I believe you said, and they just want to know again where they'll be able to get it.
Okay. I think if they just Google the phrase aliens at the Pentagon, it should come up, and the production company that is putting this out is Reality Entertainment. So aliens at the Pentagon, Reality Entertainment. It should all come up. I think it should be on. It should eventually be on, or quickly, I think, on Amazon and all those platforms. Yeah. Apologies, I'm a bit of a technophobe. I don't know all the different platforms and things, but stuff. Yeah, people should just Google aliens at the Pentagon, and it comes up top.
Hey, I want to make sure that you can talk about all the new conferences that you're going to be attending, speaking, your new books. Let's see, websites, YouTube links, anything like that. I know you have some new projects coming down the pipe. Let's please talk about that as we have about 15 more minutes.
Okay. I mean, I think the big 2 current ones are Blood Brothers, which is already on Amazon as a Kindle ebook. I think hard copy paperbacks will be out on November 15th, but Blood Brothers is already out there on Amazon and things. As I say, Aliens at the Pentagon, literally out next week. My website is nickpope.net. That has links to just about everything. I don't think we've quite got the Aliens at the Pentagon link up there yet, but the Blood Brothers links are up there, and indeed links to the previous books that I've written, and a whole bunch of free information, of course, on the website itself. Nothing on the website, nickpope.net. Nothing on there is behind a subscription paywall or anything. It's all free, and there's a whole bunch of different things that will basically tell people about my government work on this. And again, on the front page of nickpope.net, there are links to my Facebook and Twitter, and I try to keep up to date. I try to post things about the things that I'm doing, whether it's conferences, TV shows, or whatever it is. My next public appearance is at AlienCon. This is this new franchise, which is basically taking the smash hit TV show Ancient Aliens and taking it on the road, putting it into the convention format along the lines of something like Comic-Con. And they had one in Santa Clara, they had one in Pasadena, they have one in Baltimore, November 9th through November 11th. And again, all the details of that are on my website in the latest news section. So like I say, nickpope.net has pretty much everything up there at the moment. With
all the things that you've, studied and wrote about, investigated, even, I think you've even wrote about and journaled some things about ghosts and psychism and things like that. What is the one thing that you found the most disturbing out of all of this that really got you thinking? You know what I mean? The one thing that troubled you the most.
Sure. I think it is simply the capabilities of some of these UFOs. And I suspect this is a point, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I suspect this is a point Lou Elizondo would agree with. And I'm pretty sure that I've heard him say similar things. It's when you have these sorts of things going on in our airspace, when you have military pilots chasing these things, radar operators tracking them, and yet when the speeds and maneuvers are way in excess of anything that you have in your inventory, it is disturbing. And Lou did a clever thing. He made a very poignant analogy. He said, if these things came into our airspace and did these sorts of things, run rings around our Navy jets, and if it turned out that you looked at them and they had, Russian lettering or North Korean tail marks, he said there would be an absolute outcry, and rightly so. But he said there is no lettering, is no markings, and in some cases there's no fuselage and no tail. So, So what are we left with? And that is, I suppose, disconcerting. What are we dealing with? Is it some sort of next generation Russian or Chinese aircraft, drone, missile that's a quantum leap ahead of anything we have? Well, if that's true, that's a serious cause for concern. Is it some sort of exotic atmospheric plasma phenomenon that science doesn't yet understand? Again, anything that can do this has got to be regarded at the very least as a potential threat. If it's faster than you, if it's more maneuverable than you want to know what's going on. Who is this? What are they doing? And if it's not that and it's something else, then what? And yet, the ATIP program, I think, in one sense, took this as far as they could in government, and there comes a point where you hit roadblocks, and sometimes those roadblocks are roadblocks of belief, of personal paradigm, sometimes religious belief. Doesn't matter. But if you hit a roadblock, and yet the cases still keep coming in, and data it doesn't go away, then where do we go from here? And those are the sorts of questions. That's why when people like Lou Elizondo say it's time to have a serious conversation with the American people, it's time to maybe have congressional hearings about this, my answer is absolutely.
Hey,
it's long overdue.
I'm sorry about that. There's a great question from the chat. Can you tell us the official stance from the British Ministry of Defense with regards to the Rendlesham incident?
Well, the short answer is that the official position of the British government, of the Ministry of Defence, is that even as we approach the 40th anniversary of this case in the year 2020, this case is still unexplained. It is by far and away the most compelling case in the British government's UFO files. I've described it as a perfect storm of a UFO case. Multiple witnesses, military witnesses, ground trace evidence, radar trace evidence, radioactivity, radar. You, in some senses, you couldn't conceive of a better evidenced case. It is still, the short answer is it's still unexplained. The slightly more complex and frustrating answer is that because the British government actually terminated the UFO program in its entirety in 2009, we may never get an official answer unless some new smoking gun bombshell piece of information emerges from somewhere. And I don't think it will, because frankly I was there and I saw all the files and I interviewed all the witnesses and I saw all the information, and the bottom line was we don't know. Governments hate to say we don't know, but sometimes it's the only honest answer that they can give.
And just in case anybody doesn't know what the Rendlesham incident was, actually Mr. Pope wrote a book about it, Encounter in Rendlesham Forest, and this was over a series of 3 nights in December 1980. Next series of UFO incidents took place in the forest in the UK, and this wasn't like just lights in the sky. This was landing and takeoff, just something. It's actually pretty interesting. It's wild.
Absolutely. Yes, and I co-wrote that book with 2 of the key witnesses from the first night, John Burroughs, who we mentioned earlier, who now co-hosts a radio show with Linda Moulton Howe, and Jim Peniston. And John, Jim, and I teamed up actually not long after the 30th anniversary of this. We all went back to the UK for a conference to commemorate the 30th anniversary of this, and we all realized that we were perhaps sitting on different pieces of the puzzle, and we decided to try and put it all together and tell what we felt was the most complete story that we could tell on this.
What would you tell somebody if they had an incident happen to them, or they had real solid evidence of, say, something like the Rendlesham Forest incident? And since, you've worked in government fields, what would you tell a citizen? What would be the best advice to tell them to do with that information?
Well, I would say don't put all your eggs in one basket. Go contact maybe a group like MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. Contact, particularly if you believe you have any physical trace evidence, Tom DeLonge's new non-profit, the To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences. Report to the National UFO Reporting Center, and go to the media as well. Don't let anyone tell you that this is a fringe subject. Maybe that was true a year ago, but after the New York Times put this on the front page and said, look, the US government said they didn't have a program, they did. This subject has moved out of the fringe and into the mainstream. So don't be afraid to go to the media at local level, at national level, and tell them what you saw. If you've got any evidence, whether it's photos, videos, something physical.
Right. I just believe.
Put it out there. Put it out there.
Right. When you told me earlier that, the government is in the dark about a lot of these things, obviously that's true. I'm just thinking maybe some people might have had some real evidence or something substantial happen to them, and they're afraid to come out and say anything, or they don't know who to turn to. Because you hear all these horror conspiracy stories like, they put me in a padded room and locked me in there and, won't let me go and all this other stuff. And it's what you see in the movies as well.
Yes, I don't think these days, we'll send the Men in Black round. So, and in any case, if people think that sending around the Men in Black, either literally or metaphorically, is just something to silence UFO witnesses, just tell your story. Once it's out there, you can't put the genie back into the bottle, so any threats become redundant.
So I'm really glad you spent this time with us. We only have a few minutes left with us here. I'm really excited about this DVD too, by the way. Can't wait to see it. And I'll put all the links in the show notes there as well. There's tons of questions in the chat room. I'm sorry I missed them because they're going by so fast here. But in my case, as let's just say I'm a rookie, right? Well, I don't know how many UFO rookies you talk to. I'm sure I'm the first one. But
no. I mean, lots of people. The New York Times story about ATIP opened this right up and brought it to a whole new generation of people who hadn't really thought about this before. And suddenly, wait a minute, this is in the Post, the Times, in Politico. It's not kind of just a blog and forum thing anymore.
Right. And do you think that the Citizens for Disclosure, do you think that it's working? You think it's doing what it needs to do?
Yes, but I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think all these initiatives are great, but I think it's going to take real congressional hearings to get this out in the open. What did ATIP do? So let's have a look at ATIP, but let's have a look at the phenomenon in its entirety and ask the question, what are we dealing with? And the question that goes with that, what should our response to that phenomenon be?
Do you have any questions?
Hey, I saw a special on Ancient Aliens that you did with Giorgio where you're at Redlow Manor and you drove up to the gate. You drove up to the gate and you're like, all right, Giorgio, out of respect for, my former position with the government, I'm driving down the street. And you did. And then, and then some military police or something came up to Giorgio. And can you rehash that for us?
Yes, basically Rudlow Manor, and it's part of a wider military facility down there that has been, in some people's minds, linked to the UFO phenomenon. And Giorgio and the whole Ancient Aliens team wanted to check it out. I said that's fine. But I said that as a former government employee, I didn't think it was appropriate for me to go kind of snooping around military bases. So I said, Giorgio, I'm going to sit this one out. You be the one who gets arrested by the military police. And I think he very nearly was.
Yeah, we've got a lot of people here saying, well, I'm going to go to Area 51 and I'm going to get answers. And, they got sensors out there and signs that signs that literally say, we'll shoot you. We will kill you.
Look, I do not advise anybody to commit trespass anywhere, let alone a military base. So do your research, but don't kind of take any chances with stuff like that.
Well, thank you so much for spending this time with us. nickpope.net is the website. Do you want to give out your Twitter or Facebook as well, Mr. Pope?
You know what? I can't even remember them off the top of my head, but they're linked to on the front page of nickpope.net. I think my Twitter is, I don't even know, but it's on the front of nickpope.net. There are links to Twitter and Facebook on there.
Thank you so much for spending this time with us here at Lighting the Void. I really appreciate it. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we'll be right back with the second part of the show with Bill Birnes. That was Nick Pope, everybody. nickpope.net. Go check it out. Make sure you check out the new book as well as the DVD when it comes out. And I'll keep you posted with the links. We'll be right back.
Lighting the Void Radio.
The truth is out there.
There's something out here.
And so are we. KTOK Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM.
From Studio 303, It's the Stranger Than Fiction News for The Fringe FM, bringing light to the stories that surround us. Are aliens watching the International Space Station? Bizarre glowing objects spotted slowly circling the space station. An alien ship is circling the International Space Station, according to wild conspiracy theories. The clip shows a small object slowly moving near the artificial satellite. Scott Warning, who posted it to YouTube, speculates it could be a top-secret program, an unknown NASA project, or a clip of a UFO. He goes on to describe the object as disc-like, suggesting it could be proof of advanced extraterrestrial life. You can read all the details to this story along with the photographs at thedailystar.co.uk. And there's something mysterious coming up from the frozen ground in Antarctica, and it could break physics as we know it. Physicists do not know exactly what it is, but they do know it's some sort of cosmic ray, a high-energy particle that has blasted its way through space into Earth and back out again. But particles physicists know about, the collection of particles that make up what scientists call standard model of particle physics, shouldn't be able to do that. Sure, there are low-energy neutrons that can pierce through miles upon miles of rocks unaffected, but high-energy neutrons, as well as many other high-energy particles, have large cross-sections. That means they'll almost always crash into something soon after zipping into Earth and never make it out the other side. But yet, in March of 2016, researchers have been puzzling over two events in Antarctica where cosmic rays did burst from the Earth and were detected by NASA's Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna. You can read more of the details to this interesting story at livescience.com. And a Bigfoot encounter in Minnesota, and the report is as follows. As a witness crested a small hill on Highway 73, traveling east 2 miles before the intersection at Highway 53, he observed a large brown creature squatting in the swale on the north side of the road about 125 yards ahead. At about 60 yards, the creature turned and looked at him, then pushed itself to a bipedal position on very long legs and with arms swinging and hands down to its knees. It very quickly took 3 large steps across the highway, which is about 22 feet wide, and went into the swampy area that leads to a larger stand of woods. The witness, in a 15-plus second, said he saw the creature observed, and it had a flat face with no snout, round type of head with no distinct necks, and was approximately 7 to 7.5 feet tall, and guesses about 350 pounds, with close to a 60-inch chest. The hair was about 4 to 6 inches long, matted and dull-looking, not smooth and shiny like a bear. The witness stopped and got out of the vehicle, and he saw where it had been squatting, and the imprint where it pushed off. However, due to melting snow, the ground was too saturated for any kind of distinct prints. This story was posted at thebfro.net. And now it's time for this week's fun fact. 68% of the universe is dark energy, and 27% is dark matter. Both are invisible, even with our most powerful telescope. This means we have only seen 5% of the universe from Earth. And that wraps it up for another edition of the Stranger Than Fiction News, right here on The Fringe FM. I'm Vance Nesbitt. Stick around for more Lighting the Void with your host, Joe Roop.
This is Jason Lindgren from Crow 777 Radio, and you can hear us 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Saturday night here on The Fringe FM.
This is Cortana from Shift Happens, telling you to pour a glass and park your ass because you're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM. Shifthead.
Folks, this is very important information. What's to be said about CBD? AncientLifeOil.com. Our CBD is made from hemp and has 0.003 THC, which means this wonderful product won't get you high, no matter what amount you take. What does CBD do for the body? My hands are tied. But you can Google CBD benefits and be astounded. When you're finished reading, you'll want to log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. and purchase. Life is good when you feel good. People are tired of pain. People are asking for non-GMO organic products to help them with you fill in the blank. Legal in 49 states, and again, our CBD is made from hemp. Ancient Life Oil is about helping people one by one by one. If you wonder how good the product is, the CEO takes it every day without miss. AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Have a great day.
Howdy, this is Catalina, and you're listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Roop. Don't forget that this show, Lighting the Void, is here for you Monday through Thursday night, right here live on the Fringe FM. And tomorrow night on the program, Lon Milo Duquette will be on as well. Wednesday night, Trisha G will be on. So we have another cool week lined up for you. And now in the second part of our UFO doubleheader tonight, we're here with Mr. Bill Birnes. Now, Bill Birnes is a New York Times best-selling author, a magazine publisher, and a New York literary publishing agent who has written and edited over 25 books and encyclopedias in the fields of human behavior, true crime, current affairs, history, psychology, business, computing, and the paranormal. As a publisher of the nationally distributed UFO magazine, editor of the UFO Encyclopedia published by Pocket Books, and co-author with the nation's top radio talk show host, George Norrie, of a work in the light Dr. Birnes has added to his list of publications in the UFO paranormal field, which include The Day After Roswell, Unsolved UFO Mysteries, and The Haunting of the Presidents. Bill Birnes received his PhD from New York University in 1974, while he was an instructor of English at Trenton State College in New Jersey, where he taught structural linguistics and historical linguistics, as well as literature and writing. And Professor Birnes was a National Endowment for the Humanities Fellow, a Lilly Postdoctoral Research Fellow at the University of Pennsylvania, and a Grants Award judge for the National Endowment for the Arts, also Auditor General of Solebury Township, and very well known and very well spoken in the UFO field. Mr. Birnes, thank you so much for coming on Lighting the Void. It's a real pleasure having you here.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine. Thank you for inviting me.
You're well known for like Ancient Aliens, MUFON, UFO magazine. I'm just curious. I mean, my first question would be, especially in your case, at what point in your life, you've done a lot of stuff. At what point in your life did you get into ufology? Did you have your own experience, or was it something that you just took an interest in?
No. I saw, I had a UFO sighting when I was a little kid in New York City, big UFO sighting. But it was really working with Philip Corso on the day after Roswell that got me involved in UFO research.
It
was he had been Corso came across the path of this motion picture company because Corso had been involved in President Eisenhower all the way back in 1953. President Eisenhower's signing off during the prisoner of war exchange with North Korea. He had signed off on the fact that some Americans were going to be left behind in Korea. This is the story behind the Manchurian Candidate story. This is the real life story behind that. And so Corso was testifying before a congressional committee about that. And he came to our attention because we were doing a movie about POWs and a book. When we met him, one of the astounding things was that he began talking about his experience at Army R&D in the 1960s and how he came across the UFO material at the Pentagon. And so that's what got us interested, and that's how the book came about the day after Roswell.
I remember watching you on Ancient Aliens, and you were talking about how at Dulce that there's all these black helicopters. They don't have any numbers on the fuselage. There's so much activity, and everybody says that there's nothing going on. And you said, well, if there's no activity, then why are there so many black helicopters flying around?
And they were. I mean, that's part of the activity at Dulce. And when we were up there was a helicopter, black helicopter, no markings on it, that was hovering close to the top of the summit of the Archuleta Mesa. And then I get a phone call after it was all over, after I was back east. I got a phone call in which this person said to me, don't you Hickory Apaches, he said, don't you know that there are pictures of you on top of the mesa? I said, well, who took the pictures? He said, well, it was the helicopter. So they were surveilling us on top of the mesa.
Really?
Whoa. Now, Mr. Pope was just on here and said that he stated that, the government is more in the dark, I believe was his general statement, in the dark about some of this stuff, more than a lot of us think. So, like I was telling him before, I get told that, yeah, the government's in the dark, but then other people tell me, no, the government's not in the dark. They know pretty much everything, and they're working with ETs and getting a lot of different stories here. What is your take on the government involvement? Do you think that they're in the dark, or that they're clueless about a lot of things, or that they know quite a bit more than they're leading on?
Well, I think they know more than we know. Let's start with that. But I think that largely they're still in the dark about a lot of this, such as how these things fly, what propels them, why they're here. Maybe there's been communication with the government, maybe not. But one of the real, to me, clues was the government, go back to 2004, was the government's reaction, the Pentagon's reaction, the Navy Command's reaction to the encounter between these two F-18s off the coast of San Diego, and they were flying off the Nimitz, and this they call it a tic-tac shaped UFO, but an elliptical UFO hovering over the Pacific Ocean near the United States fleet at the San Diego Naval Base. And the government was from what we got from the result of all the debriefings, and remember, this thing is all on video, so you can see the video yourself and hear the radio transmissions yourself. So, I mean, it's clearly a UFO. Call it a flying saucer if you want, but clearly a UFO. Clearly, it's doing something, because it's the water underneath it is all churning up, even though the saucer is in the air, but the water is churning beneath it. So that signals to me there's some kind of a magnetic wave or a gravitational wave driving the craft and driving the water beneath it. And the pilots are discussing this thing like, oh, look at that, holy mackerel, look at how it's moving, hey. And you can hear their conversation. And yet the Pentagon is very, very ho-hum. There's no military alert, no classified fleet-wide alert, because this thing is hovering over the Pacific Fleet at San Diego. And so the reaction is very muted, which tells me that the government knows a lot more about this than meets the eye, and really isn't worried about it at all. It's just a UFO, just whatever it is, it's just there. No sense worrying about it. It's not going to hurt us. We're not going to hurt it. And that's the reaction. Complete acceptability. That tells me a lot.
Yeah, it is interesting to sit back and watch the whole thing. I'm especially interested in what's happening with this, ATIP and all of these things of this nature, because they are, the word ATIP gives you the feeling that UFOs are a threat, and that talking about it, that it's there and admitting that it's there. But that's really all the talk that we have about it as far as that goes with disclosure. But they're not talking about, which I know that you've talked about before, is how UFOs are, which, I mean, I think Dr. Sala talks about this too, turning off missiles and nuclear sites and things of this nature,
sure.
you know?
That's right. That's exactly what they're doing. What they've been doing in, I think it was 1965, that year of the year, in Mon-Thurs Air Force Base in Montana. A craft hovering over the missile site, it's an Air Force base, at the same time, all the control panels indicating the status of the guided missiles and the different flights, a missile silo is a flight, and all the different flights, suddenly the status lights lit up saying that the missiles were no longer under the control of the people, of the controllers in the silos. That means that those missiles were no longer, we couldn't launch the missiles. We had no control. They were in a no-go status. These are hardwired communications between the controllers and the missiles. It's not wireless, not internet. This is all hardwired. So something had to get in. It was obviously some kind of an electron burst that had to get into the wires to stop the flow of electrons from the carrier signal from the controllers to the missiles, indicating the status of the missiles was a go status. Once the electrical current, once the signal was interrupted, the missiles were no-go. So it was obviously something, nobody knows what the object did, but it correlated with the objects being there. That was in the United States. Over in the Soviet Union, for sure, the missiles, instead of going on to a no-go status, went on to immediately arm themselves, entered their launch codes, and the launch sequence began, much to the absolute panic of the Soviet controllers in their own silos, trying to shut them down. Just abort this. Stop it. Moscow Center, where more controllers were, unable to shut the missiles down. So we were about to be attacked by Soviet missiles, and then at the last minute, the missiles were shut down. Control was returned to the controllers who shut the missiles down. What was that message?
Doesn't seem like they're a threat to me.
Yeah, we're not going to let you launch them. We control your missiles. So it's interesting. What is the message? What do they want? Why are they here? And the government seems to know more, because in the United States Air Force incident in Mon-Thurs Air Force Base, the government simply said it was a defective equipment, when everybody at that missile flight said the equipment was in perfect working order. But the Air Force said, oh, no, it's just defective equipment. And what does that tell you?
Yeah, it's pretty obvious. I mean, like, you've been one of the biggest purveyors for this message, not afraid to stand up to any skeptic, scientist, or anything of that nature. And you've done this community a huge service for that. So we all thank you for it. But there are questions here in the chat room about your show, UFO Hunters, that everybody's kind of wondering what happened to it. There's even some people saying that the government shut you off or something.
Well, in part they did. I mean, it was a combination of things that when you put them all together, when you put them all together, you could understand what the network was thinking. One of the things, of course, was that A&E and History Channel were merging. There was a corporate merger going on. And history was splitting into two channels. There was regular History Channel, and they were looking at doing scripted dramatic series like the Kennedys and things like that. A lot of the UFO shows wound up on H2, which are more the reality shows. That was one. The other thing was that the changes that the network wanted to the show for the third season put a real damper on the science behind a lot of the show. In the first two seasons, what we were able to do was do a lot of scientific experiments in the last act of the show, in the final 5 or 10 minutes of the show, to show that certain things worked. For example, in the first episode, we proved that the highly ferrous material being carried by the B-25 bomber in the bomb bay. This is in the first episode about the UFO over Washington and the Kelso crash. That heavily ferrous material acted as its own circuit and jumped the circuit, allowing the breaker to fail, the plane to catch fire in the bomb bay, the fire to spread out to the wing. That's what brought the plane down. So it wasn't a UFO. So we were able to use scientific experiments throughout the first two seasons. In the third season, we couldn't do it, and the show flattened out. We still had high ratings, but that was another problem. Third problem was that we'd gotten into trouble in the Dulce episode because we showed a photograph taken by a New Mexico state trooper of the embryo of a calf that he removed, that a veterinarian removed from the womb of a mutilated cow lying on the side of the road. The police officer was in his unit. He saw the helicopter over the cow lying on the side of the road. No markings on the helicopter. He didn't know what it was. Lights and siren, drove up. The helicopter sped off. He noticed the dead cow, called for a veterinarian. It came out, opened. We noticed the cow was pregnant, near term. Opened it up. There it was. It was a cow's body with a human head. Well, the network was upset about airing that thing. We aired it. And 1 month after we aired that photo, you can see it. It's on YouTube. Look for Underground Alien Bases. And when we aired it, in the United States Senate, 3 senators, Grassley, I think, is one, Landry was another, Graham, I think, was a third. So 1 Democrat, 2 Republicans, introduced a bill making genetic interbreeding among humans and animals illegal. So if Big Pharmacy was out there practicing interbreeding to grow organs in bovine fetuses and bovine wombs, if that was the deal, if they were to grow human organs in animals, then kill the animals, take the organs, implant them into human beings, what a huge, huge pharmaceutical advance that would be, medical, surgical advance that would be. Now, it's illegal because that's what happened in the Senate. Everybody was furious. Folks from Disney were called on the mat. Were told, hey, this is like secret stuff. So that was the third nail. That was the fourth nail. And so there are a whole bunch of reasons the show was canceled.
Well, yeah, a lot of people are disappointed in it for sure. That it got canceled because it's been a fan fave for a while. I just, do you ever get to the point of frustration? Like it's just, I mean, you've been in the fight on this, kind of talking about these things for quite some time. Has there ever been a point where you're like, it's just not worth it anymore? I'm just going to go, you ever thought about, I'm just going to go?
No, not really, because it doesn't really matter. The question is the research circle, the number of people involved in the research such that it's just too small a group? I mean, you need more eyeballs on this. You need more hands. But the downside is that the more people you involve in the research, the more the vulnerability of exposure of what's going on. So you're constantly balancing that. I mean, the one thing you want to figure out is what propels these craft. How are they able to navigate? Where are they from? Do they use dark energy? So far, none of the research has shown that these craft use dark energy. So how can they cross large distances in space and navigate in Earth's environment? Do they go underwater? Are there bases underwater? These are a lot of the questions. Now, we think the government knows more than it's letting on, but at the same time, people have said that, there are old files and mountains of data about these things, but that if the data were ever released to the public, that the world's religions would collapse, the world's institutions would collapse, so the government keeps them under tight control. That's another theory. So you get to choose your theories.
I have not had a UFO experience myself. I know John and I went out earlier and just saw some things that kind of looked like, and just where I live, what did we see? We saw like 3 or 4.
I think they were drones. I can't be positive, but I believe that they were drones. So, Bill, tell us your take on this. So I have the night vision goggles, the Gen 2s that I got from Ben Hansen at the UFO Congress where I met you this year. And so we're here in
it just doesn't seem like we're in the dark about all this stuff, but they got drones and satellites everywhere. It just doesn't make sense to me.
But we see something that's in low Earth orbit, like lower than an airplane without the flashing light. FAA regulations, they have to have a flashing light, a beacon light. And these objects did not have those flashing lights. And can't prove what it is, can't prove what it isn't. But what is your best educated guess?
Well, the funny part about seeing lights in the sky that you can't identify, it's not a plane, not a helicopter, no noise. The funny part about that is that most people see that and write that off. Oh, I don't know what it is. I don't know what the hell it is. Probably a plane. And when you think about how many people are actually seeing UFOs on a nightly basis all around and don't realize they're seeing them because they're not encounters, they're brief sightings. Something passes by. It's funny. A light looks like it wasn't moving, but now it is. Things like that. Okay? You don't know what it is. Most people see that. Most people see that and don't really recognize it for what it is. So it's the same with your own sighting. You saw something, you don't know what it is.
Right, and I got some pictures on my iPhone camera, which is not ideal for taking photos at night of what you think might be a UFO. And I showed Joe, I used to live in Sedona, and it's a hot spot. Anybody that lives there will tell you that they've seen UFOs and that there's a joint UFO ET/military base right there inside of all the canyons, which are right around Thunder Mountain. Do you know anything about that?
No, that I don't. There are all these rumors of ETs and government working together. You can show that there are underground bases. You can show that strange things are going on. You could show that there are observable things that don't make sense. But in terms of jumping to a conclusion that the government and ETs are working together, that's really more of a leap of faith.
So anyway, I was showing Joe some photos that I got from Sedona, and they were blurry. And the best way I can explain that, and I want to see if you agree with me or not, is that the reason a lot of UFO photos are blurry, and it's easy for the debunkers to say, well, it's a blurry photo, it's a blurry image, but could that potentially be an anti-gravity envelope or some kind of anti-gravity technology that is blurring the light spectrums, therefore blurring the photos?
Well, it certainly could be an energy envelope that is distorting the light. That's certainly possible. And the entire craft could be vibrating or shimmering in such a way that the lens, especially on an iPhone, can't capture it. It's just moving too fast. There are, again, these are theories. These are speculation. There are theories that that the UFOs are able to move because they're inside, and this is why that tic-tac video of the water churning underneath the UFO is so important, because if there's an energy field around the UFO that's going to affect the environment. So this is what we do know, because, or at least what witnesses have said. One, you could see in the tic-tac video the distortion of the water underneath. So you could see it. You don't need somebody to tell you it's there. It's there. You can see it.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
Well, I was just going to say we've got to take our network break, but I want you to finish your point for sure.
Oh no, it's a longer point. So go ahead and take your break, and then we can come back.
All right, cool. So we'll do that. We'll take our network break, guys, and we'll be right back with Bill Birnes. Also, if you got any questions, make sure you drop them in the chat room in caps. You guys have been doing real good with that, so thank you. And the phone lines are open too if you want to call in, which is 1-800-588-0335 if you want to call. We'll be right back with Bill Birnes. You guys don't go anywhere.
Lighting the Void Radio.
This is Rev Dan Lopez from Spiritual Warrior Today Radio, and you're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM.
Ahoy there, Gigi here.
And I'm Cortana, and we're here to take you on a journey through all things paranormal, metaphysical, mythology, and even psychedelic on our show,
Shift Happens, live every Friday night from 7 to 9 Pacific. That's 9 to 11 Central, right here on The Fringe FM.
And remember, don't feed the archons, Feed ducks instead.
Duck up.
Occult Arcana is a balanced and objective guide to those subjects considered a part of the nature of light and darkness. Addressed in this text is a compilation of material that will provide new perspectives and awaken latent abilities that we all possess. The content herein shall provide magical sustenance for adept and novice alike, and will help strengthen the cornerstone of mystic understanding and alchemical transmutation. If you are interested in this modern grimoire, you can find detailed information and ways to order by visiting www.thesecretteachings.info. Although esoteric and occult studies remain vast, they are rooted within a universal philosophy that is difficult, if not impossible by finite terms, to explain in words. Language places restriction and erects barriers to understandings. By this it is to be understood that there are some things man should consider far too sacred to profane with definition. For these concepts and the manner by which we live our lives, we shall take a note from the Greek philosopher Pythagoras. Quote, "Silence is better than unmeaning words." End quote. To get your autographed copy of Occult Arcana today, simply visit www.thesecretteachings.info or email The Secret Teachings at rdgable@yahoo.com.
Follow The Fringe FM on Facebook and Twitter at The Fringe FM.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
If you have hard water, the lime scale not only leaves white spots, it clogs pipes and breaks down appliances, costing you hundreds of dollars in energy and wear. Eliminate lime scale and other water issues like brown staining and bad odors with HydroCare water products available from Wave Home Solutions. Wave's affordable water systems don't use salts or chemicals. You'll love the way your water tastes, smells, and looks. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
Times are changing. The circus of politics, healthcare's low standards and high prices, and let's not forget food quality. What to do? Arm yourself with Life Change Tea at GetTheTea.com. In a world of chemical imbalance and poor air and water quality, it's time you make a move. Log on to GetTheTea.com and stock up on organic non-GMO supplements. Don't forget the tea. Cleansing your body never felt so good. And we have a brand new tea called Takedown Tea, which helps support healthy glucose. All natural body support so you can be at your best, naturally. All you have to do is log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. We're not a fad that comes and goes. We are the real deal. Join us and armor up. GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. Changing America's health one tea bag at a time.
Hello, this is Vance Nesbitt. Take the time to expand your mind by listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop right here on the Fringe FM.
All right, we're back here on Lighting the Void. I want to thank Vance Nesbitt for sending that station drop. If you guys want to send your station drop, all you got to do is just send me an audio file of saying what you like about the show. It could be nice, crazy, mean, doesn't matter. I'll probably play it. We'll add a little pizzazz to it. Also, this weekend, I'm going to be at the Arkansas Paranormal Expo here in Little Rock, Arkansas. So if you are around, you happen to be in the local area, come by and see me. We'll be there broadcasting live from that event. And Mr. Birnes is here with us. And I think that what my curiosity about this is, because, like I said, I can't really reveal what I'm doing, but in October, I'm going to be starting a new project, and it's going to be just straight up studying UFOs. And what I'd like to know, in your opinion, is where is the best place in the United States of America to try to catch a UFO sighting, in your opinion?
Well, if you want to see something interesting, the way to do it is to drive across the state of Nevada from Las Vegas right through Rachel, Nevada, and just cut right through the Nevada desert, because you will see something in the middle of the night that will surprise you.
What will we see? I mean, obviously a UFO, but what is it?
It's more like a triangular-shaped craft, and it's going to be hovering around the base, around Area 51. And it really has a wide range, and people have told me that they have seen this thing or something like it over the desert for years at night. Whose is it? I can't tell you.
Last October, I went to Rachel, Nevada, and stayed at the Little Alien. Are you familiar with that that restaurant? And they have those little campers out there. It was so cool. And you go inside and you see pictures of Larry King, Montel Williams, Stanton Friedman, Linda Moulton Howe when they were very young, Sean David Morton before he went to jail and he had long hair back then. I mean, it was a trip down memory lane in the world of ufology. So did you actually stay there?
We filmed there at the end of season 2 of UFO Hunters. We filmed there when we were doing the Area 51 piece.
Excellent. Did you see anything? Because when I was there, we saw 5 of them.
Oh, we saw it all right. In fact, if you go to YouTube and see the episode, the Area 51 episode, you will see it yourself because we filmed it.
Here's the thing that gets me is the UFOs, which I've seen a debate about, and this is going to be part of the project I'm working on. Is it more military craft? Because as far as technology goes, I'm not saying there's not aliens by any means at all, but it seems to me like, I mean, there's pictures of unmanned drones back in the 60s. So if that technology was then back then, what do they have now? And I think a lot of these people that see UFOs might actually just be seeing maybe a project or maybe something stealth. I'm not saying they're not UFOs, but I want to be clear that I get this idea and I get these messages, especially on social media. They give me these pictures and it's all, well, here's a UFO. It's got to be aliens, right? And I just think that there's a lot more military operations going on, and we're giving them credit and calling it aliens or something from another world. I'm just curious what your opinion is on that.
Well, if you were the military or the National Security Agency or whatever agency is involved, and you're flying secret aircraft that are very advanced and nobody knows about them, look at the history of the stealth fighter and the stealth bomber as examples. UFOs are your friends, because all you have to say is, well, it's a UFO, and people go running around, it's a UFO, and nobody knows or nobody figures out that it's your own weapon. So UFOs are actually the best camouflage for things. That's first of all. In the late 60s, in the early 70s, not the late 60s, the early 70s, after the Vietnam War, airline pilots flying a route from McCarran Air Force and from the northwest, from McCarran Airport in Las Vegas across the Southwest would routinely see these strange craft kind of cozying up under their wing, and they were flying triangles. In fact, it was the stealth fighter that was being tested, and what they were practicing was that it could get inside an aircraft's collision radar and hide in an airliner's radar signature without ever being picked up on radar, even though the airline pilot would see it. And so it became like a whole rash of UFO sightings over the Southwest. They were really the stealth fighter being tested. The one type of aircraft we were experimenting with and probably have perfected, I mean, it's been around for 200 years, is neutral buoyancy, essentially a balloon. But it doesn't have to be a balloon with a ball on top and a gondola hanging from the bottom. What if the whole thing is the shape of a triangle? And what if it is equipped with holograms and lasers and projectors? And what if at a certain point it is invisible? In other words, it has a device on it that takes light from behind the object and projects that light in front of the object. So if you're a certain distance away, the way the lenses are aimed, let's say they're lenses, and the way they're aimed, they project to form a 3D image in front of you, which you can't see, because to you it just looks like the same background as behind the craft. So it's functionally invisible, even though it's there. And, I mean, if you were looking at it from another angle, you might see a shadow or something else. Well, we have that technology now. We have that. We possess that. So, and we've been dealing with that technology really ever since the 1960s. Now, so a lot of these craft could be our craft, and the reason they're overpopulated areas is to just show the feasibility of having a large aircraft flying or hovering over populated areas and nobody can see it. So that would be one of the reasons for that. So it's plausible that it's ours and not anybody else's. A lot of them are.
Yeah, I think it is. I think that's entirely plausible too. I just wanted to get your opinion on that. I got to be real careful when I ask that question, because some people get upset. They think that you're trying to get polar about it. Like, oh, you don't believe in aliens? Well, of course I believe there's life on other planets, but I want to get to the real information here, you know? And it's times like when we just get really out there without having anything to back anything is when it makes us kind of look bad and people don't take us seriously. And I want this subject to be taken seriously more than anything now because of the disclosure that happened in the 17th. And I think we're getting closer to it. But in your opinion, what do you think is, out of everything that you've ever saw, wrote about, and studied, the best evidence of life on other planets, that we're being visited by life from other planets?
Well, those are two separate questions. I mean, is there life on other planets? I think we'll make that discovery soon enough. I mean, we might make that discovery in the next 2 or 3 years, a concrete discovery. We know there was water on Mars. We know there was some sort of, and there may still be water on Mars. And the water, in fact, we know there's water on Mars. And the fact that there's water on Mars, if there's water on Mars and there's some kind of microbial life on Mars, how old is that microbial life? How far back does that microbial life go? were there other types of creatures on Mars? So we think that we will make that discovery in the very near future. Is there life on Enceladus? Is there life on Titan? Is there life on other moons in the galaxy that are water moons? By water moons, I mean they have internal oceans, and in moons like Titan, the oceans spurt out into space. There are geysers that go miles high. Well, what's in those geysers? What can our craft see? And that's the data that we're analyzing now. So I'm very hopeful that we're going to find something. As to intelligent life on other planets, we haven't even figured out if there are other intelligent species on planet Earth. I mean, we're an intelligent species, at least more intelligent than other species. Is Bigfoot real? Are there more complex societies and languages and cognition that takes place among dolphins or whales? We don't know that yet. So there's a lot we don't know. And there's a lot we know we don't know.
What do you think, Bill, about how the American astronauts are actually riding with the cosmonauts from Russia to get up to the International Space Station now, since we've pretty much decommissioned that whole program?
Well, we're going to be recommissioning a program like that very soon. I think that SpaceX and other companies, I mean, look, you've got three major players in the market here. You've got Bigelow Air. Well, more. You've got Bigelow Air. You've got Elon Musk. You've got Jeff Bezos, and you've got what's his face, Branson. So you've got private players in this space that are not going to be constrained by government regulations in terms of disclosures. I mean, they will be constrained in terms of, let's just say that SpaceX encounters a UFO. And Musk, I'm speculating now, these players are under strict sanction not to talk about flying saucers, period. You don't talk about these. If they do, how much of their own research is being funded by contracts from the government? I mean, you make improvements in certain kinds of launch vehicles and first stage rockets and that kind of technology. That relies a great deal on contract payments from, let's say, from NASA or from the military. Well, if that's the case, then you're going to be very careful about what you disclose to the public about this. And what's going to happen when the time comes that we are able to actually launch vehicles, capsules made by some of these private companies? What's going to happen when we have the first people return to the moon and they see stuff? So I would say that the next 10 years, the next decade, will be extremely, I look at that with great anticipation because we are going to find things out. I mean, we will be on the moon and maybe even on Mars by 2022, 2024. That's very exciting.
Do you believe that we already have a base on the moon?
Well, I believe we have left materials for a base on the moon. I mean, landers and I mean, we reuse material. But in terms of an active base on the moon, I've heard stories about it. People have told me they've seen photographs of it. when I see something, I'll know. But I have heard it from Ingo Swann, who is one of the country who began the nation's remote viewing program, from another psychologist who was a photo expert for the United States Air Force, who repaired a machine that was jammed and had been used in a secret part of this Air Force base to process photographs taken from the moon. And on one of these photographs, this person said he saw structures on the moon. And the person who was with him said, yeah, we've been there before. We've been there for a while. So I don't know what's there. I don't know that we're the only ones on the moon either. By we, I mean Earth people are the only ones on the moon. What if there are alien crashes on the moon? What if that's one of the reasons we've been waved off? I mean, there were two
weird things.
There were two Apollo landing programs on the books, Apollo 18 and 19. And according to NASA, those resources were shifted to the International Space Station, and those two NASA missions never took place. What if they did take place? And what if we saw something up there that said, we're not going back for a while?
Yeah, like something that spooked them, something that, well, it seems like they get spooked pretty easily. If a ship moves wrong or zigzags, then it's a threat. And I mean, I guess I can understand that from a national defense point of view. We don't have anything that can maneuver like this, so we need to look at that as a threat. But I'm not sure that I agree with the public push of calling it a threat and putting that name on it like ATIP, because to me, if they were a threat, we would know it by now, most definitely. And it seems to me like they're, like you were talking about earlier, if they're shutting off nuclear stuff, maybe there's something else going on where they're just making sure we don't kill each other.
Well, what if the something else that's going on is that we are really a colony of some other planet or some other race? I mean, they're human beings like us, but we're a colony. We were planted here. We were planted here genetically. That was part of their plan, to colonize space.
I believe that.
Or colonize their space. And and just like Britain had a royal governor in the New England colonies, in the North American colonies, and there was constant back and forthing, well, they may do the same thing.
Right. I totally believe that. And you're right. As the private sector is going to do this. SpaceX is going to send a Japanese billionaire. I think his name is Yasuku. I can't pronounce his last name, to the moon by they're saying as early as 2023. And I don't see how the government isn't getting involved. I'm just curious. Like, if you've got enough money, let's say $40 billion, $50 billion, you can pretty much do what you want. It seems like to me. Do you think the government is still trying to get involved with these people and, oversee them and make sure that they do this or that? Because that's not what we're getting in the media. All we're getting is, hey, yeah, they're going to launch this super rich Japanese guy to the moon by 2023.
Right. So where are they going to launch him from? Are they going to launch him from Cape Canaveral? Well, then you're dealing with the government. I mean, in other words, where are the launch facilities that you're going to use? If they're government facilities, you're dealing with NASA, you're dealing with the government. So the fact that the government's involved is no surprise. And you're dealing with issues that involve national defense. I mean, I could think of a number of scenarios where a hostile power, name one, uses a series of front companies to invest heavily in a rocket development company and manages to sneak aboard or get aboard or so compromise it that they can launch a bomb, a nuclear device, a multi-warhead device. One of the warheads might contain some sort of a biological or chemical or viral agent. I mean, absolutely the government's going to want to be very careful about who goes into space and who doesn't, for that very reason.
I wonder what they can. It really, like I was asking Nick earlier, it just seems weird to me. Once you get into space, what do you really own? What can you really control? Other than the orbits? I mean, what they're saying, Mr. Birnes, is that this Japanese guy is going to take 6 people with him to the moon, and they're going to be artists. So a painter, possibly a musician, and a film director, and a fashion designer. Some of Earth's greatest talents will board this spacecraft and be inspired in a way they've never been before. If the government has seen something up there, I don't think that this is going to go through. I'm just trying to keep an eye on this because I don't think they're just going to let citizens do whatever they want, even if it's people like Elon Musk that have tons of money, unless they're directly working with him. And he's already admitted that he's worked with the government on a few projects.
Right. So the thing is, what is the deal that you're going to have? I mean, obviously, if a foreign government is going to have its own space program and reach the moon, and if there are aliens out there, they're going to find them as well. Is there some kind of an agreement with the United States? Is there a global agreement? That I don't know. But the more you have private citizens going into space, if there are phenomena out there that are not natural phenomena, then they're going to disclose it. And so that is another stream of disclosure that might be happening, that people will be drawing. They're going to be artists. They're going to be photographers. They're going to be cinematographers. There will be people who will be recording this event, not just the event sanitized by NASA and the United States military, but on their own. And if that's the case, what are we going to see?
I've got a question for you, Bill. So D-Glock, the Bell, potentially a space-time travel vehicle, Operation Paperclip. Do you believe that Wernher von Braun and other German rocket scientists potentially brought that technology over to us during Operation Paperclip?
Yeah, absolutely, that's true. That there were scientists that, as the Soviet army advanced across Europe, and it was advancing into Germany, after the Allies had bombed Peenemünde, bombed it very heavily, destroyed it, then the Nazi missile program moved to a site, Mitteldauer, was underground, was on the Baltic, and so they were able to launch missiles, and they moved their V2 launchers to the coast of France so they could bomb the British. As the Russians closed in, Wernher von Braun led a group of scientists. Remember, these are SS officers. So Wernher von Braun was SS. So he's not just some scientist with a lab coat. He's SS. He runs a concentration camp. So he's leading these people, and SS were true believers. So it wasn't just coaxed, oh, come on, it's like a big fraternity. It's not. They were true believers in this. There were a group of German scientists who were captured by the Soviets, and American scientists who went west, and German scientists who went west to surrender to the Allies. But the German scientists that were captured by the Russians and the German scientists that were working for the Americans kept in communication. And so they were sharing their notes. That's how the Soviet Union got into space first. They basically have notes from our scientists working with us. So on the one hand, that's true. But so Operation Paperclip did take place. The records were there. We know all about it. And that's true. Die Glocke, the bell, the German weapon, I think, was a nuclear enrichment facility. I mean, I've been there. I've been to that cave, and I've seen it. And I believe that it was a nuclear enrichment facility. And what happened, it was based on the German scientists and the SS spent a lot of time in India. They were fascinated by the Indian tales from the Vedic texts of UFOs and atomic particle beam weapons and atomic weapons, and they really believed that the Vimana, which flew around in these counter-rotating cylinders of liquid mercury, of red mercury, they believed these were real things, and they tried to build one on their own. But as they built it on their own using liquid metal in counter-rotating cylinders in the cave, in this bell-shaped cave, the radiation field was so intense, it was killing people. That's how intense the radiation field was. Now, what happened? Now, what we believe this device was, we believe it was a nuclear enrichment facility. They were enriching uranium. Hence, the the radiation field. They were enriching radium to make a warhead for a weapon that, when launched, would change the war in a matter of days. We know that's what would happen because that's what we dropped over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The question then remains, if they had a nuclear enrichment facility, if they were enriching uranium fuel, if they had this device, why weren't they able to perfect it? And that secret comes, well, there's a movie about that that's coming out, that the soldier was a spy, or the catcher was a spy, about Morris Berg, who worked for General Groves in the OSS and went to Switzerland to see if Werner Heisenberg had the switch, had the formula for detonating a nuclear weapon. If he had it, he was going to kill him and then kill himself. If it was a suicide mission. If not, then if he decided he didn't have the switch, he'd come home. Well, they did have the switch all along, but Heisenberg refused to give it to the German High Command. So they knew the power of this. So they refused to use this weapon, but they probably had the weapon. And that was the secret of the bell.
Wow. That's interesting. I hadn't heard it. I've never heard it from that exact perspective before. I wanted to ask you a totally different question. Remember back in the day, Dwight D. Eisenhower wanted to know what was going on at Area 51. So he brings a number of troops from the U.S. Army, basically, and goes and pounds on the door and demands answers. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, that never happened because it was Eisenhower who started Area 51. See, Area 51, that area was an artillery base, an artillery testing ground. That's why in World War II, the runways were very long.
So that never happened? Bill, that never happened? Because Laura Eisenhower says that it did, and I only went by what she said.
Yeah, I know. No, what happened was when Lockheed went to the CIA, when the CIA and Lockheed teamed up to develop a spy plane, they needed very long runways for the craft. And Area 50, and this area, the old Nellis Air Force Base, the old artillery grounds, were perfect for it. But the base wasn't opened until 1955. And it was Eisenhower who opened the base. And Eisenhower was only in office, really, 5 more years. So, I mean,
yeah, that's pretty interesting.
The base wasn't around in 1947. The base wasn't around in 1951. It's not named Area 51 after the year it was opened. It was opened in 1955.
That's interesting because that story's floating around out there.
Yeah, I think I've heard that too.
There is a lot of
somebody.
false information out there that's floating around that myself and other researchers will, indoctrinate as truth just because we heard
somebody say it.
Ancient aliens talk about it.
Yeah.
So.
Right. Well, the story of Eisenhower's secret trip gets conflated with Eisenhower's reputed meeting with the aliens at Muroc Air Force Base in California.
Oh, the Greada Treaty.
Where supposedly, yeah. So, I mean, those two stories get conflated.
Well, let's talk about the Greada Treaty. Did it actually happen? What's your take on that? And go ahead, tell the story briefly for those that don't know it.
Well, first of all, it can't be a treaty because it was never ratified by the Senate.
Okay.
So that's first of all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If it had been a treaty ratified by the Senate, it would be public information. So it's not. The Eisenhower was planning a trip to a golfing trip. Took a secret flight to California, where he allegedly met with a delegation of extraterrestrials. This was after the 1952 Summer of the Saucers, when literally Washington airspace was invaded by flying saucers. Eisenhower himself saw flying saucers and underwater and unknown submersible objects, USOs, during Project Mainbrace in the North Sea in 1952. So Eisenhower knew what he was looking at. And the deal was that we could not have these aliens in our skies or these craft in our skies buzzing our planes because there was going to be a shooting war. And so the deal was, it was a version of the Open Skies Agreement that Eisenhower negotiated with Khrushchev, that the Soviets could surveil our sites, we could surveil their sites, and we wouldn't shoot at each other because we didn't want a mistake in making false assumptions about the enemy that could trigger a preemptive nuclear strike, trigger a bilateral nuclear exchange, and basically poison the atmosphere for generations to come. So the treaty that Eisenhower struck, and not really a treaty, but the agreement, the understanding that he struck with the extraterrestrials at Muroc, that agreement was the model, was the template for the Open Skies Agreement that he negotiated with the Soviet Union. That's my take on it.
I am curious as to what your opinion is on one of the things that has bugged me forever is that, people are saying that NASA has been airbrushed, and editing photos and covering this whole thing up. And I used to laugh at people and say, man, NASA's not covering anything up. You're just a conspiracy theorist, yada, 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 right? Then I had spoken to David Adair on the program, who, is pretty much a rocket scientist. And he's telling me, look, some of the stuff they're doing, I've worked with them. It don't make sense. They spent billions of dollars on these rockets and these fuel things and just used them once and then put them in a museum when they could have left them full of fuel. He said, something tells me, I'm not saying for sure, but tells me that you just wouldn't leave billions of dollars of stuff like that laying around, only use it once, which to him, made him think that something else was going on, that there was a secret space program going on, which is a huge topic today, the secret space program. Lots of stories being talked about it. And I think that I'm starting to believe that there's actually a real secret space program. I'm just not so sure what it is, because there's some real banger of some stories going around, you know, Mars, super soldiers, and all of this stuff. I'm curious about what your take is on that.
My take is that if there were a secret space program, we would know about it. We would have known about it a long time ago. I mean, for all the secrecy surrounding the crash at Roswell and the cover-up, we knew about it in the 50s. I mean, there were stories in the 1950s. UFOs were in the skies on a movie tone news and the front pages of the nation's newspapers. So the concept of an alien life form or of UFOs is so alien to us that we reject it out of hand, because we're the only ones on this planet, so nobody else is here. Well, so it's easy to maintain something of a cover-up, but, I mean, the story of Roswell began circulating as far back as the 1950s. The first crash at Roswell was ordered to be a press release. I mean, that was a military order given to Walter Haut to inform the newspapers that the Army had captured a flying disc outside of Roswell. So, I mean, there was no cover-up in the early hours. It was orchestrated by the Air Force, well, by the Army Air Force. It was orchestrated by them, but there was nothing that complicated in the early days. And so my thinking is that there really isn't a secret space program, that the millions of billions of dollars we waste on junk equipment, that's been going on forever. And the military, and there is a black budget program that is so heavily funded. We can go into why it's heavily funded, but it's heavily funded. So they literally have money to burn. I mean, so I don't cotton to that, although there are reports that we are much more along the road of propulsion and certain types of propulsion engines than you see every day.
Okay. You know, so what I'm finding out on, and this is the internet, okay? So the internet is saying, and this is just Wikipedia saying that you claimed that NASA made 3 additional trips to the moon, Apollo 18, 19, and 20, and that Apollo 13 incident was actually an extraterrestrial attack meant to scare humans away from landing on the moon. You still,
right?
You do believe that?
I do believe that.
Okay.
I do believe that.
That's kind of like a secret space program, but not the super soldier Mars mission type thing. You know?
No, it's not. I mean, I think that we've been warned. I mean, if you look at the hidden NASA transmissions, they've seen stuff in space. They've seen stuff on the moon. They believe they're being fired at on the moon. I mean, I do think that at least 18 and 19 were real missions, and we discovered something that we just didn't want to bring back.
Do you believe that they knew that there was something on the moon prior to landing on it in 1969? And do you believe that we actually landed on the moon in 1969?
Yes, we landed on the moon in 1969. And NASA knew. They had written a report called the Lunar Anomalies. And you could find it. It's on the internet. It was a NASA report. So this is not some UFO speculation. This was NASA reporting on anomalous sightings going on the moon ever since the 17th century. In fact, one of the people who saw lights flying around the moon was Cotton Mather, who was the fire and brimstone preacher in the New England colonies. And in fact, it was Cotton Mather who put a stop to the Salem witch trials in Massachusetts.
Interesting.
He said, you guys are nuts that are doing this. And this is not justice. But he's the person who saw UFOs on the moon. And they've been seen ever since the 1690s. So just imagine 300 years, 320 years of lunar sightings, officially curated by NASA. So that should tell you a lot.
John Lear stated that in 1962 that we were mining the moon for helium-3, and if you filled the rocket boosters for the space shuttle with helium-3, it's enough energy to power the whole United States for a whole year. Have you ever heard that before?
Well, I know that John Lear has talked about helium-3, and I know that the moon is very rich in those minerals. I mean, that's one of the things about the moon that makes our lunar program, our cancellation of a lunar program, so dumb, is that
right.
The moon is a real source of minerals. I mean, mining on the moon would be, and we had plans for a moon base all the way back in 1956. They were comprehensive. You could, by the way, find the plans in the back of the book The Day After Roswell, but you could first call Project Horizon. But we had those plans. We had those plans 60 years ago, longer. So the stupidity of this is that with all the reasons rolling out on the moon, it's bad TV, it's dull TV, it's a lot of money. Mining on the moon was our objective 60 years. So John Lear is absolutely right about the treasure trove that is up there in terms of minerals. Why have we not established a lunar colony to do the mining?
Do you believe?
I think it's because we know there's something there.
Right. Do you believe that Wernher von Braun and his team of rocket scientists, while in Germany, were able to create technology that would take them to the moon as early as the 40s? Well,
if they had created technology to have taken them to the moon in the 40s, they would have gone to the moon in the 40s. What Hermann Ober told everyone and wrote, he was very open about this. Hermann Ober was one of the German scientists. He was the father of German rocketry. Of course, the German rocketry program had its beginnings in New Mexico with Robert Goddard, who was the American scientist flying rockets in the 1920s. So the Wernher von Brauns, the Hermann Oberths, they all studied with Goddard. They took that technology back to Germany in the 30s, and that's what resulted in the German rocket program in the 1940s, early in the 40s. But Hermann Oberth publicly announced, he said, we were helped, he came over in Operation Paperclip. He said that we were helped by people from other worlds. That was Hermann Oberth.
I remember that.
Head, right? Well, that was, and then he wrote about flying saucers in American magazines, in popular magazines in the 1950s. So you don't need the Germans going to the moon. They basically were writing about, they were helped by people from other worlds.
Well, that'll help you in your technology programs, that's for sure. So when I first really learned who you were, it was 2009, and you were on Ancient Aliens. I believe you were probably on one of the very first episodes, if I recall.
I was on the first episode. It was my show. I created the show, and yes, we were on the first episode.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it was Chariots, Gods, and Beyond, March of 2009. And you were defending ancient alien astronaut theory, and you were like, if you really...
Probably 2010, because we were still in our third season in 2009.
Anyway, but that's where I first started to learn about you, and I'm like, wow, this guy. You do your research. You are so diligent in your research. You're a historian also, as far as ufology goes. And I don't know, I just found you very interesting, and so I started to follow your work, UFO Magazine, and then UFO Hunters. And weren't you also on Hangar One as well?
I might have been. I'm not sure.
I know.
Really am not. I really don't know.
Anyway, but you were one of the progenitors, 2010 or whenever it was, that really got me interested into, because I'd always believed in UFOs, I'd always believed in aliens, but I didn't really know anything about ancient alien astronaut theory. And it was a whole new perspective, and I loved the science, and I loved the archaeology, and I started to learn and understand it. So tell us how that really shaped the last, 8-10 years of your career.
We were trying to do episodes. This was Pat Uskert also was really pushing this very hard. Try and do these episodes. And Pat kept on saying, I don't understand why we're not doing one show about the ancient stories of astronauts that came to planet Earth. The whole Eric von Daniken theory of chariots of the gods. Why we weren't doing at least one episode on it was really, we were really lobbying our exec producer, lobbying the network, lobbying history. Finally, they said, go ahead and do it in the third season. And that was why we had Giorgio Tsoukalos on the show. I had him on the show a lot in the third season to really bring that back. And you saw a lot of that. And Ancient Aliens stemmed from that third season of UFO Hunters. In fact, the whole test of the glider was a repeat of the test we had done. That was our idea to do that when Giorgio showed us the little artifact that he was wearing.
Oh, and they recreated it, and they could demonstrate that it could actually fly.
Right, and we had done that in the first episode of the third season of UFO Hunters, because what I had said was, this thing certainly isn't a bird, because no bird has its wings that far back.
Mm-hmm.
It certainly isn't, it's the wrong tail for a bird. When you look at it, birds don't have tails like that. I said, it's an aircraft tail. And it's an aircraft tail for flying in this atmosphere. How did they know about it? Back in the year 1400, before Columbus arrived. How did they know about this? The big question is, if you scaled it up, would it fly? Really, that was a major point. If it didn't fly, if it dropped like a rock, well, whatever they were doing. But if it flew, that meant the proportions were right. Well, we don't know what this thing was propelled by, but we know that the space shuttle lander, we know that the lander glides home. We know that. It doesn't fly back, it glides back. So because of that, this thing had to glide. Would it glide like the space shuttle lander? And so when we catapulted it and its tail dropped and it began to settle, just like the lander, we knew that this was not some coincidence. It looked like a bird.
No, it looked like the space shuttle lander. I mean, to me, it looked like it.
Right. And so the question is, since it looks like the lander, why is it? How did it get there? See, that's the whole point. How did the lander get there if it was the lander? Assuming this was really an artifact from the ancient Mayans. How did it get there? And that was the whole theory of time travel.
Yeah. So this is interesting. In 1947,
we got to take our last break. We can ask that when we get back to this.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Break.
I'm glad I caught it before we got into it, though. We only got 30 minutes left. Well, actually, less than 30 minutes left with Bill. So if you guys got any questions, get your questions in. I missed a couple there. I'm sorry. But we'll be right back with Bill Birnes, guys. Don't go anywhere. I'm Joe Roop. This is Lighting the Void live on the Fringe FM. Stay tuned.
Out there.
There's something out here.
And so are we. KTLK Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
Hey there, truth seekers on the fringe. Do you feel you have special abilities, but you don't know how to control them, or maybe you can't access them when you want to? Do you know that there's more to life than your day job? This is Amalia from KnowTheSelf.com. I want to invite you to join my free 5-day challenge to activate your gifts. This challenge will introduce you to the practices I teach in my mystery school for modern day living. The challenge starts on October 3rd and continues until October 7th. And it's live on Facebook. You're going to learn how to take back your power and become a sovereign being. To sign up for this free 5-day challenge, send a text message to 44222 and type the words Know the Self to get instant access. Again, send that text message to 44222 and type the words Know the Self, KNOWTHESELF, and get instant access. We need you to activate and fulfill your potential.
Does your basement or crawl space have a damp, musty smell? Well, watch out! That's a sign of too much moisture and not enough ventilation. And that can mean increased mold growth and the buildup of harmful toxins and gases. Don't bother with a dehumidifier. It just circulates the same unhealthy air. Now there's a better way to remove these dangers and odors. It's with the computerized Wave Moisture Control Unit that reduces moisture and expels pollutants.
We replaced our old dehumidifier with the Wave unit, and in only 3 weeks, our basement is dry and the musty smell is gone.
Wave units require no maintenance, no buckets of water or filters, and costs only pennies a day to run. Breathe better, live healthier with an affordable, no-maintenance Wave unit. Call 888-717-WAVE, 888-717-WAVE, or visit dryhealthyhome.com. Dryhealthyhome.com.
Ride the wave. Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
Follow The Fringe FM on Facebook and Twitter at The Fringe FM. The Fringe FM loves hearing from you. Have a suggestion, comment, or question? We're all ears. Email talkback@thefringe.fm. Hey, Fringe FM listeners. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
Do you want to lose weight but have no idea where to begin? The Fast Start Diet, a 3-day weight loss plan, is the answer. 3 days of nutritionally balanced, calorie-restricted meals delivered right to your door. No shopping, no measuring, and no cooking. Everything is prepared for you and ready to eat at home or on the go. The Fast Start Diet has all the amazing benefits of intermittent fasting without starving. We've helped thousands of people who have struggled to reach their weight loss goals. Isn't it time we helped you? With the Fast Start Diet, you'll lose weight and feel great.
Find us on Amazon or go to faststartdiet.com and use promo code TALK to get $10 off your first box. As a special bonus, we'll include our #1 rated Lipo3 appetite suppressant spray free with your order. Whatever your diet plans are, start with us at faststartdiet.com.
Want to know what's on the Fringe FM? Check out our schedule at thefringe.fm.
All right, we're back, and we're here with Mr. Bill Birnes. Fascinating night it's been to be able to talk to Nick Pope for the first part of the show, and for the second part to talk to Mr. Bill Birnes, and now having John Polk in studio, in the shack here with me is a whole new, another adventure for me, because I've never had anybody here on the show with me like this, so in studio, so it's been pretty cool. And I've learned a lot tonight. And I cut John's question off right before the break. Go ahead, brother. Now you can finish her up.
Let's clear up some of the misconceptions and just wrong information about Admiral Byrd when he flew into the center of the Earth from Antarctica in 1947.
Well, Admiral Byrd had wanted to explore the South Seas. I mean, that was something that he wanted to do. And so he led an expedition. See, the story of the first of all, the story of the land under the ice in Antarctica started all the way back in before World War II, that the Germans had a breakaway group had migrated to underneath the Earth to the South Sea, to the South Pole, and established a government, a German state, underneath the South Pole. And they call that New Swabia. That was the name of the country. And supposedly the people in New Swabia were very far advanced, and they developed flying craft, and when a lot of the German Nazis fleeing at the end of World War II, after the government was collapsing, they fled to New Swabia, and it was partly a military mission that Byrd led, a fleet of ships and then a squadron of planes into the Earth in Antarctica. And this is folks can read about this, by the way. They can get, if they go to shadowlawnpress.com, shadowlawnpress.com, they can find an electronic copy of Admiral Byrd's diary and download it. They can buy it for themselves and download it, and they'll have that diary, and they can read the whole story of Byrd going to the center of the Earth, and his squadron was attacked by flying saucers. But they left him alive, and they said, go back and tell everybody, stay away. And to this day, nobody's contacted the people under the Antarctic.
That's interesting, because I never heard that he flew in there with a squadron. The rest of the squadron got shot down. and he was the only survivor. That part I never heard. And I guess that's what I was alluding to. That I did not know. So that's why it's so awesome to do these interviews. And hey, let's make sure that we talk about your UFOs and the White House and some new TV shows also that you have coming up.
Sure. Well, the new TV shows basically were really circulating demonstration proposals for shows about Bigfoot that we're doing, and then UFOs and the President is another series we're trying to set up. And we're trying to set up a series on, well, we actually have that under option. This is a book about Max Jacobson, who was the ad hoc doctor of JFK. He's a doctor who wound up actually killing Marilyn Monroe, ad hoc doctor of JFK, and he really brought the methamphetamine epidemic to America from Europe. He processed. He was the first Walter White. I mean, and so he lived. He died in 1979. But I mean, he was responsible for the drug war in the United States. Richard Nixon wanted him to treat him. So this is a whole untold chapter in American presidential history: the drugging of Jack Kennedy.
Wow, that's deep. Well, I can't wait to see this series. When do you expect it to be released?
Oh, wow. We have to shoot it first.
Oh, you haven't even shot it. Okay.
No. We haven't done anything. We're setting it up. So this is going to be probably in a couple of years. Same thing with UFOs in the White House and the other Bigfoot series. We're setting them up now. And but UFOs in the White House is really, it's the UFO Files meets Paranormal Presidents. That's really what it is.
That's great.
That'd be awesome. They all say they're going to do that, though. You know it? Oh, I'm going to... what was his name? The late night host guy that said he asked every president if they would talk about disclosure.
Oh, Jimmy Kimmel would do that.
Yeah, but it's like they never do.
Jimmy Kimmel did. Brian Fallon did. But the point of that book and the series is that UFOs have been on the North American continent ever since the 1690s. That the first official European colonial UFO sighting was by these two fishermen in the Charles River. Obviously, it's the river that separates Boston and Cambridge, Massachusetts. And they have this sighting. This is all the way back in the 1690s. It was earlier. It was probably in the 1680s. And they had this sighting of this flying elliptical object. And they were fishermen on this boatman on the Charles River. And they rowed their boat toward this particular floating in the sky, pink elliptical object. And the next thing they knew, in a flash, they were back to where they started. They had no sensation of movement and no sensation of the passage of time. So what you're seeing is the first UFO encounter and missing time case, abduction missing time case in the New England colonies in the 1680s. Now, carry that all the way forward to Jimmy Carter's UFO sighting, to Ronald Reagan's UFO sightings, to Hillary Clinton's promise to reveal all the information about UFOs, to Gerald Ford's demand that the Congress study the UFO question in 1966, to the story of Jackie Gleason, the comedian Jackie Gleason told, where he where Richard Nixon took him to Homestead Air Force Base in Florida and showed him the body of a dead alien. So these are all the things that are in that book, those stories.
Absolutely fascinating. And Grant Cameron also covers similar information about UFOs and U.S. presidents, and I'm sure you've done a lot of work with him, or at least know of his work. And
oh, sure, he's been on my radio show. Yeah, I know Grant very well.
What is the name of your radio show?
Well, it's off the air now, but it was on for back 5 years ago. It was called Future Theater, and it was on another network, and it was on Monday nights, and Grant was one of our guests.
Okay, I knew you did a radio show. I just didn't realize that it wasn't being aired currently. So what else is coming down the pipe for you? I know that you stay busy. You got any new conferences coming up?
Well, I'm going to be at the Philadelphia, at the Pennsylvania MUFON, Philadelphia UFO conference at the end of this month. I think the 26th and 27th. I'm going to be at that conference with the folks from Pennsylvania MUFON talking about stories of UFO sightings, but a lot of the stories of UFO sightings come right out of this area of Pennsylvania. Bigfoot sightings are over in the western part of the state, but a lot of UFO sightings are over here in the eastern part of the state. And I've been told these wild stories from people who've seen UFOs and were told to stay there, and the police would come, and they fled the area. They said, "Not me, boy. I'll tell you, not I. I'm not going to stay here with this UFO here, and the cops are coming down. Forget it." So we know all those stories, and we're going to be telling those stories at that UFO conference, live witnesses.
What about Kecksburg?
Well, Kecksburg was a fascinating story. I mean, there was one person who believed that Kecksburg was an errant satellite.
I heard it was a Corona satellite. I heard it was a Corona nuclear
satellite.
Is that true, or based on your research, what do you think?
Well, that's what this person argues.
Mm-hmm.
We argue something different. We said that our arguments are that that device, that the satellite wouldn't have been able to navigate the way it did, that the radiation was too strong in the device. It was glowing purple when it landed, and it looked more like an artillery shell. And the people who came close to it have suffered from radiation poisoning their entire lives. So we don't think it was the Corona satellite, nor was it the Venus probe. So we think it was something else entirely. And a very similar object came down almost 40 years later in Needles, California, in the Colorado River.
I heard about that.
Off the Colorado River. Yeah, the Needles 2008 sighting. It was the Needles crash. So we believe that this was a very different kind of an object, and NASA was there to pick it up. They were there. President Johnson was informed. We were worried that it was a Soviet missile head. And so, but the big thing was that people were threatened. There was one radio commentator who was doing a feature story on the sighting, and the witnesses, he was murdered. So this was very serious business for the government.
That's kind of freaky.
Yeah,
that's really freaky, man.
I know somebody that was in that area and was driving through Needles and happened to run into somebody at like a restaurant or something. And they said for a number of years, the spooks would come out and be around town, and Needles is not that big of a place, and would literally go up to people and see if they're talking about it still, and would instruct them to, silence and refrain from talking about it at all, making it kind of obvious that something was going on. Why would they send these spooks out there to harass people?
Oh, it got worse. Did
it?
A lot of the spooks out there were from the Atomic Energy Commission, the Atomic Energy Agency.
Really?
And they were deployed out of Area 51. And these are really tough guys. Their job is, so you understand this, Their job is to retrieve by any means necessary nuclear material.
Well, like
these are heavily armed.
Any means necessary, like what's our rules of engagement, type thing, or
if you have to kill to take it, kill. I mean, it's very serious. These people are tough guys. They were the ones in Needles, and they were the ones suppressing it. And there were black helicopters coming over. Folks told us about the whole story, about the surveillance that was heavily covered. Yeah, we were there twice.
I think they call that weapons free. Rules of engagement.
Well, they were really heavily covered in that area. There were trucks with 50 caliber machine guns mounted on these things. Jeez. They were riding through town. They were stopping people. They were surveilling the radio station. They had a unit outside the radio station, obviously surveilling their signal, monitoring their signal. Yeah, this was serious stuff for them. It was nuclear. It was a nuclear weapon.
Hey, have you, besides the obvious little shenanigans that people are pulled to, mess with your TV show, UFO Hunters? Mm-hmm. Have you ever had anybody else, like, let's say a phone call, a car outside?
We had a ton of them. First of all, we were hoaxed a lot. People tried to hoax us. Then they hoaxed the media to prove they hoaxed us. That was funny at the start of the third season. I would get these strange phone calls. Oh, let's meet so I can talk to you about my UFO secret. Well, what's your cell phone number? Oh, I don't have one. Well, that's funny because this one says blocked on my phone. I mean, people tried to prank us and hoax us and stuff like that, and we just shut it off.
Well, what I mean is, and yeah, I could definitely see that, but what I mean is,
Oh, that was real. Oh, there was one person, and that was real. That was a real CIA operative. We became friendly. FBI guys would contact us. We became friendly. And they would share some secrets, a lot of great secrets, stuff that I really can't talk about. But, I mean, some of them are really incredible secrets. Not UFO related. Well, one of them is UFO related, but ancient alien related. And was a secret mission to retrieve a data stack from an Egyptian artifact.
What did I tell you?
And the CIA had to deploy one of these cowboy type missions because the guy who they sent out went rogue and tried to sell it, and they had to suppress it, and they took him out.
You see, I had a cousin in the military that told me that when they went to Iraq, and they went to Iraq and they were handed out playing cards with, certain terrorist leaders and stuff like that. So they just had to memorize it, kind of like police memorize suspects. When that mission was done, he said that his squad got a playing card deck full of symbols and artifacts. And we're told that, and he told me this in confidence, but I don't care, I'm saying it, that if they found anything that looked like these artifacts, anything that resembled them, to report it to their CO immediately. Why?
Oh, sure.
You know what I'm saying? Like, why are they're after, are they trying to cover up our origin story, or are they trying to figure it out for themselves before we do? That's what I'm curious about.
Both. Well, really both. I mean, when you consider some of these ancient sites, like Göbekli Tepe and sites like that, where the people who were already like thousands of years in the past, they talk about the elders who they're praying to. That's scary. Who are the elders?
Right.
What was going on there before human civilization in the Mesopotamian Crescent? Really? I mean, when you think about that. So these stories go way, way back, these ancient alien stories.
Now, there's a book by Manly P. Hall called What the Wisdom Expects from Its Disciples. It's more of an essay, really, but in that book, he reveals some Masonic secrets in that book. And being through Masonry myself, I never knew that it got that deep, honestly. But in that book, he talks about hidden masters that are secretly, and he says it secretly manipulating the destinies of the mystery schools and lodges that are in our governments today. It says it right there in the book. A 33-degree Mason that they made him an honorary Mason because he had so much information about it. So it's pretty trippy. That's the kind of stuff that worries me. I mean, I don't want to fearmonger, but
well, you know who's a 32nd degree Mason? J. Edgar Hoover. And he only trusted two groups, Masons and Mormons, because they were completely hierarchical in how they thought.
Yeah.
And so he only trusted them for his agents.
But sometimes, honestly, I wonder if there are other beings out there that are kind of guiding us, and they're good people, but either way, that book says manipulating the destinies of these schools. Any manipulation's never a good thing, I don't think, ever. So, yeah.
Well, the textbook for this should be the Isaac Asimov trilogy, Foundation and Empire, because one of the folks we had on UFO Hunters as a guest, who had translated the committee report, told me the exact same thing. Told me that they were here, that they are us, they're indistinguishable from us except in certain ways. He has seen them, and that they're controlling our destiny. They're behind the scenes in businesses, financial manipulation, political manipulation. They control it. And so when I mentioned to him, is it like the foundationers in Isaac Asimov's Foundation and Empire trilogy? And he said, absolutely. I said, well, if that's the case, was Asimov in the know? In other words, is it science but not fiction?
Right.
And he said, absolutely, Isaac Asimov was in the know.
Right. Master manipulators. You got that right, Craig. Well, Mr. Birnes, we do have to get out of here. I really appreciate you coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. And the main website is at william.birnes.com. Is that where everybody needs to go check you out?
Yeah, they can go there. They can go to shadowrunpress.com. They can see all of our books, and the William Birnes site it hangs off that.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming on the program. Tomorrow night.
Well, pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Bill.
it's been a great pleasure. Lon Milo Duquette's going to be on the program. What an awesome show. Nick Pope, Bill Birnes. We got like 20 seconds. This show was produced by the Fringe FM and cannot be syndicated without written permission. And music was by Chronox, Guitar Man by Bundy, and other music by Space Station and Kevin MacLeod. See you guys tomorrow night. Thanks, John Pope.
Thank you, brother.
All right. Good night.